Heraclitus is one of the first to consider whether or not we are in accord with the speaking and the logos and the logical. The Buddha is so similar in ways to Heraclitus. Some German scholars in the 1800s saw that Heraclitus says you can never step in the same river twice. Buddha and Confucius, oddly, there is a thinker in Greece, India, and China who say you can never step in the same river twice. All is in flux and changes. Things go up and down. Is Archilochos, the earliest of the great archaic Greek poets. Heraclitus may not have been the first philosopher ever, but he was one of the first thinkers in Greece who spoke words about what life means and if it is speaky logical or not, with fragments of his text and teachings in the work of many who quoted him, such as Plato, Aristotle, Epicurus, and the Roman Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius. Heraclitus lived in Ephesus, which was part of the Persian Empire for most of Heraclitus's life on what is today the west coast of Turkey. Around the same time that Pythagoras and Parmenides, two of the other famous first philosophers, lived in what is today Italy. Pythagoras and Parmenides argued that true being is unchanging, with Pythagoras focused on the harmony of mathematics and Parmenides the impossibility of non-being and thus change. Heraclitus argued that the only constant is change, polar opposite Parmenides. All things are in continuous flux, and an equivalent similar fragment is, we can never step in the same river twice. These are his most famous statements, and they are often paired together. We are and are not, and he also says you do and do not step in the same river. Being and non-being together are becoming. In India, the Buddha and others said things like this, and the Taoists and others, even Confucius, says the next generation will and won't be like us. Heraclitus said Pythagoras had more knowledge than anyone, but Pythagoras believed that he had been a sardine in a previous life and a cucumber in another. Because Parmenides warned his followers about those who confuse being and non-being as one, Pythagoras seems to have come first, Heraclitus slightly after, and Parmenides slightly after that, having heard of each other in the years before their schools of thought were popular. The three, Pythagoras and then Heraclitus and then Parmenides, had a powerful impact on later philosophers in the golden age of Athens, such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, who dominated Christian European understandings of Greek philosophy before Germans such as Hegel and Nietzsche got increasingly into Heraclitus and other pre-Socratics in the 1800s. So the first quote is supposed to be the opening of the single work that Heraclitus wrote on nature, effectively how stuff works. Heraclitus left his single written work as an offering at the Temple of Artemis, one of the legendary wonders of the ancient world. The word that Heraclitus used for word is logos, the Greek origin of our word logic. While modern people sometimes understand logic as a mathematical or computer language, and that is after Boole led to telephone systems with ones and zeros, for ancient Greek thinkers such as Heraclitus, Plato, and Aristotle, logic is arguing, explaining, and understanding. So if I say, hey, be more logical here, I mean be more reasonable and talk more reasonably. And Heraclitus is the first person to talk about logic, and he says being logical is reasoning some and some, which oddly enough is Aristotle's ethics. But Aristotle's logic, in opposition to Heraclitus, tries to hammer down black and white and says if you are a skeptic like Heraclitus and you believe things are and are not, you're no better than a plant and a dog. Hegel tries to resolve both sides. Hegel believed he was in the 1800s giving self-completing skepticism in the entire chess set by merging Aristotle with Heraclitus. Heraclitus believes the world is logical because we are in conversation with the world, and if your lungs or your heart came to a stop, so would communication, life, talk, back and forth, everything. Heraclitus says we are and aren't logical, we need to be more into that and grow continuously, and we never hit our end. But Aristotle seems to demand black and white truth right now. Aristotle did argue there are no white crows, there are no black swans. Turns out there were both, and there are still, and all over the place now, but there were in Australia. Aristotle apparently never got to Australia, as far as I know. It is clear from the opening of Heraclitus' work that there is a single mind and logic to the cosmos. We have inductive and deductive minds that seem to go both ways here, and that is what Hegel notices between Heraclitus and Aristotle, and I never tire of pointing out how similar Hegel could have seen these forms in India, Greece, and China. So experts, the sort of people Heraclitus warns us about who spout tricky, lying words, argue that Heraclitus identified consciousness with the element air, the breath of life. When Heraclitus uses the word word, he is referring to the stuff of air, breath, speech, and life, such that talking about cosmology and philosophy is kindling our mind, kindling the mind fire so you can see things. Our mind fires see things in visions and mean things things with words, heating air with fire to talk to each other. So when Heraclitus opens his text saying this word is eternal, but many are numb to understanding it, he means the flow of the weather, and that's the speech and the beings, and everything is the speech and ordering and body and mind of the cosmos, and we're watching the conversation with itself as each other and ourselves. And that is logical or not. We are the words of the logical conversation of the mind itself. So Heraclitus opens his text saying the word is eternal but hard to understand, and he means his word and the explanation of how the universe works, as well as the plan of the universe which causes everything to continuously happen, including Heraclitus himself speaking, a small tongue of flame that spouts air about the endless fire. Later Christian and other Abrahamic thinkers speak of the Greek logos as the word of the Lord, as a plan and a command of a king. Like Heraclitus, they do not mean the Bible. The word is supposed to, in Genesis, be there, hanging out with God, which is not a Chinese-style book flapping like a butterfly with pages. It's the living speech. The voice itself is hanging out, very much like Gibril announcing things, gets to help separate things, commanding right and left to separate. The breath of life. Plato says vegetation is basically the hair of the world. Scholars generally agree that whoever wrote the Gospel of John in Greek was influenced by Stoicism, which was influenced by Heraclitus, which is why the beginning says the word was with the monotheistic God, before monotheistic God uses the word to order day and night to separate and create the order of the cosmos. Heraclitus argues that human words are baby talk to the gods, so the best that his words can do is point beyond human words to the unending mind of the universe. For Heraclitus, he doesn't have the word concept. Our words, our word horse, is our concept of horse. This is how the Chinese also speak of it, and many others. When people in the ancient world say your word, and this is sort of like your secret name amongst the Israelites, you grasp the horse by the word horse. That talk is so central to understanding and reasoning and meaning that when you know the word horse, when you have the word, you have the understanding, whether or not you're just saying the word horse like a parrot or not. Heraclitus does not argue that all things are made of air, as Anaximenes argued in nearby Miletus, nor that all things are made of water, as Thales also argued, also in Miletus, like the Persian Zoroastrians, who would have been the Magi who visited the babe Jesus. Heraclitus's arche, his primary element, is fire, like a star overhead, which comes at a certain time in the cosmos, if you're the Zoroastrian Saishant or the Jewish Messiah. Heraclitus sounds like a Greek polytheist wrestling with the fire-centered monotheism of the Persian Zoroastrians and the Magi. As Heraclitus himself says, many experts think they know good and bad. They can't tell you exactly where good and bad, and darkness and daylight separate. Darkness and light are not categorically separate from each other. They are one and the same continuous thing.